Three guys go in for a job interview all at the same office. The first one goes in for his interview and the interviewer says, "What's the first thing you see when you look at me?" The guy says, "That's not too hard, you've got no ears." The interviewer says, "Get out! You'll never be seen around here again." The second man takes his turn and is asked the same question. The applicant replies, "You've got no ears." The interviewer throws the guy out, cursing and yelling that he'll never get a job with his company. As he is leaving, the second guy warns the third guy, "Listen, man, whatever you do, don't say he hasn't got any ears. He's so touchy with the ear thing." "Okay," said man 3 on his way into the office. Once inside, he is told, "Name the first thing you notice when you look at me." The guy answers, "That's easy. You wear contacts." The interviewer was flabbergasted. "How on earth did you know that, son?" "What? Are you kidding? You can't wear glasses, you've got no ears." A London lawyer runs a stop sign and gets pulled over by a Glasgow copper. He thinks that he is smarter than the cop because he is a lawyer from London and is certain that he has a better education than any jock cop. He decides to prove this to himself and have some fun at the Glasgow cop's expense. Glasgow cop says, "License and registration, please." London lawyer says, "What for?" Glasgow cop says, "You did not come to a complete stop at the stop sign." London lawyer says, "I slowed down and no one was coming." A Glasgow cop says, "Ye still didn't come to a complete stop. License and registration, please." London lawyer says, "What's the difference?" The Glasgow cop says, "The difference is you have to come to a complete stop. That's the law. License and registration, please." The London lawyer says, "If you can show me the legal difference between slow down and stop, I'll give you my license and registration and you give me the ticket. If not, you let me go and don't give me the ticket." Glasgow cop says, "Sounds fair. Exit your vehicle, sir." The London lawyer exits his vehicle. The Glasgow cop takes out his baton and starts beating the fuck out of the lawyer and says, "Do you want me to stop or just slow down?" A man was walking down the street when he was accosted by a particularly dirty and shabby-looking homeless man who asked him for a couple of dollars for dinner. The man took out his wallet, extracted $10 and asked, "If I give you this money, will you buy some beer with it instead of dinner?" "No, I had to stop drinking years ago." The homeless man replied. "Will you use it to go fishing instead of buying food?" the man asked. "No, I don't waste time fishing," the homeless man said. "I need to spend all my time trying to stay alive." "Will you spend this on green fees at a golf course instead of food?" the man asked. "Are you nuts?" replied the homeless man. "I haven't played golf in 20 years. "Will you spend the money on a woman in the red light district instead of food?" the man asked. "What disease would I get for 10 lousy bucks?" exclaimed the homeless man. "Well," said the man, "I'm not going to give you the money. Instead, I'm going to take you home for a terrific dinner cooked by my wife." The homeless man was astounded. "Won't your wife be furious with you for doing that? I know I'm dirty, and I probably smell pretty disgusting." The man replied, "That's okay. It's important for her to see what a man looks like after he has given up beer, fishing, golf, and sex." Fred and Mary got married but can't afford a honeymoon, so they go back to Fred's parents' home for their first night together. In the morning, Johnny, Fred's little brother, gets up and has his breakfast. As he is going out of the door to go to school, he asks his mom if Fred and Mary are up yet. She replies, "No." Johnny asks, "Do you know what I think?" His mom replies, "I don't want to hear what you think, just go to school." Johnny comes home for lunch and asks his mom, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" She replies, "No," Johnny says. "Do you know what I think?" His mom replies, "Never mind what you think, eat your lunch and go back to school." After school, Johnny comes home and asks again, "Are Fred and Mary up yet?" His mom says. "No," he asks. "Do you know what I think?" His mom replies. Okay, do tell me what you think, he says. Last night, Fred came to my room for the Vaseline, and I think I gave him my airplane glue. Oh, push him up it. Returning home from work, a blonde was shocked to find her house ransacked and burglarized. She telephoned the police at once and reported the crime. The police dispatcher broadcast the call on the radio, and a K-9 unit, patrolling nearby, was the first to respond. As the K-9 officer approached the house with his dog on a leash, the blonde ran out on the porch, shuddered at the sight of the cop and his dog, then sat down on the steps. Putting her face in her hands, she moaned, I come home to find all my possessions stolen. I call the police for help, and what do? They send me a blind policeman. Randy staggered home very late after another evening with his drinking buddies. He took off his shoes to avoid waking his wife, Kathleen. He tiptoed as quietly as he could toward the stairs leading to their upstairs bedroom, but misjudged the bottom step. As he caught himself by grabbing the banister, his body swung around and he landed heavily on his rump. A whiskey bottle in each back pocket broke and made the landing especially painful. Managing not to yell, Randy sprung up, pulled down his pants, and looked in the hall mirror to see that his butt cheeks were cut and bleeding. He managed to quietly find a full box of Band-Aids and began putting a Band-Aid as best he could on each place he saw blood. He then hid the now almost empty Band-Aid box and shuffled and stumbled his way to bed. In the morning, Randy woke up with searing pain in both his head and butt, and Kathleen staring at him from across the room. She said, You were drunk again last night, weren't you? Randy said, Why would you say such a mean thing? Well, Kathleen said, it could be the open front door. It could be the broken glass at the bottom of the stairs. It could be the drops of blood trailing through the house. It could be your bloodshot eyes, but mostly, it's all those Band-Aids stuck on the hall mirror. A little boy was doing his math homework. He said to himself, 2 plus 5, that son of a bitch is 7. 3 plus 6, that son of a bitch is 9. His mother heard what he was saying and gasped. What are you doing? The little boy answered, I'm doing my math homework, Mom. And this is how your teacher taught you to do it? The mother asked. Yes, he answered. Infuriated, the mother asked the teacher the next day, What are you teaching my son in math? The teacher replied, Right now we are learning addition. The mother asked, And are you teaching them to say 2 plus 2, that son of a bitch is 4? After the teacher stopped laughing, she answered, What I taught them was 2 plus 2, the sum of which is 4. A California businessman, while in Japan for some business meetings and a few rounds of golf, arrived in Tokyo a day earlier than expected. Feeling lonely that evening, he employed the services of a beautiful young Japanese girl to be his companion for the evening. Although the Japanese girl spoke very little English and the businessman spoke no Japanese, their passion roared, and in the heat of the moment she began yelling, Gama Su! Gama Su! Hearing this, the Californian knew he had pleased his female Japanese friend and soon afterwards went to sleep. The next day, while playing golf with his Japanese business colleagues, one of his Japanese partners holed his shot from 170 yards away. Everyone went crazy and began yelling excitedly in Japanese. Wanting to impress his friends, the Californian joined in and began yelling, Gamasu! Gamasu! Suddenly, everyone became quiet. After a moment of silence, one of the Japanese turned to him and asked, Wrong hole? What do you mean, wrong hole? My dear wife, you will surely understand that I have certain needs that you, being 57 years old, can no longer satisfy. I am very happy with you and I value you as a good wife. Therefore, after reading this letter, I hope that you will not wrongly interpret the fact that I will be spending the evening with my 18-year-old secretary at the Comfort Inn Hotel. Please don't be upset. I shall be home before midnight. When the man came home late that night, he found the following letter on the dining room table. My dear husband, I received your letter. and thank you for your honesty about my being 57 years old. I would like to take this opportunity to remind you that you are also 57 years old. As you know, I am a math teacher at our local college. I would like to inform you that while you read this, I will be at the Hotel Fiesta with Michael, one of my students, who is also the assistant tennis coach. He is young and virile and, like your secretary, is 18 years old. As a successful businessman who has an excellent knowledge of math, you will understand that we are in the same situation, although with one small difference. 18 goes into 57 a lot more times than 57 goes into 18. Therefore, I will not be home until sometime tomorrow. Two men, Tom and Joe, have loved baseball more than anything their entire lives. One day, Tom says to Joe, "If you die before me, promise me you'll come back and tell me if there is baseball in heaven." Joe agrees and makes Tom promise the same thing. About a week later, Tom dies. One night, Joe wakes up to somebody calling his name. Scared, he asks, "Who's there?" Suddenly, Tom appears and says, "Hi, Joe. I'm coming here from heaven. I've got some good news and some bad news. I'll give you the good news first. There is baseball in heaven." Joe gets very excited, but then he asks, "What's the bad news?" Tom looks at him grimly and says, "I looked at the lineup and you're pitching tomorrow." "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I have been with a loose girl." The priest asks, "Is that you, little Joey Pagano?" "Yes, Father, it is." "And who was the girl you were with?" "I can't tell you, Father. I don't want to ruin her reputation." "Well, Joey, I'm sure to find out her name sooner or later, so you may as well tell me now. Was it Tina Minetti?" "I cannot say." "Was it Teresa Mazzarelli?" "I'll never tell." "Was it Nina Capelli?" "I'm sorry, but I cannot name her." "Was it Kathy Piriano?" "My lips are sealed." "Was it Rosa D'Angelo, then?" "Please, Father, I cannot tell you." The priest sighs in frustration. "You're very tight-lipped, and I admire that. But you've sinned and have to atone. You cannot be an altar boy now for 4 months. Now you go and behave yourself." Joey walks back to his pew, and his friend Franco slides over and whispers, "What'd you get? 4 months vacation and 5 good leads?" A farmer had 5 female pigs. Times were hard, so he decided to take them to the county fair and sell them. At the fair, he met another farmer who owned 5 male pigs. After talking a bit, they decided to mate the pigs and split everything 50-50. The farmers lived 60 miles apart, so they agreed to drive 30 miles each, find a field in which to let the pigs mate. The first morning, the farmer with the female pigs got up at 5 a.m., loaded the pigs into the family station wagon, which was the only vehicle he had, and drove the 30 miles. While the pigs were mating, he asked the other farmer, "How will I know if they are pregnant?" The other farmer replied, "If they're lying in the grass tomorrow morning, they're pregnant. If they're in the mud, they're not." The next morning, the pigs were rolling in the mud. So he hosed them off, loaded them into the family station wagon again, and proceeded to try again. This continued each morning for more than a week. Both farmers were worn out. The next morning, he was too tired to get out of bed. He called to his wife, "Honey, please look outside and tell me whether the pigs are in the mud or in the grass." "Neither," yelled his wife. "They're in the station wagon and one of them is honking the horn." John visited his 90-year-old grandpa who lived way out in the country. On the first morning of the visit, John's grandpa prepared a breakfast of bacon and eggs. John noticed a film-like substance on his plate and asked, "Are these plates clean?" His grandpa replied, "They're as clean as cold water can get them. Just go ahead and finish your meal." For lunch, Grandpa made hamburgers. Again, John was concerned about the plates, as his appeared to have specks of dried egg on it. "Are you sure these plates are clean?" he asked. Without looking up, Grandpa said, I told you before, those dishes are as clean as cold water can get them. Later, as John was leaving, his grandpa's dog started to growl and wouldn't let him pass. John said, "Grandpa, your dog won't let me get by," Grandpa yelled to the dog. "Cold water, go lie down." A little boy wanted $100 badly and prayed for 2 weeks, but nothing happened. Then he decided to write a letter to the Lord requesting the $100. When the postal authorities received the letter addressed to the Lord, USA, they decided to send it to the White House. The president was so impressed, touched, and amused that he instructed his secretary to send the little boy a $500 bill, as this would appear to be a lot of money to a little boy. The little boy was delighted with the $500 and sat down to write a thank you note to the Lord. It read, "Dear Lord, thank you very much for sending me the money. However, I noticed that for some reason you had to send it through Washington, D.C., and as usual, those jerks deducted $95. A California businessman, while in Japan for some business meetings and a few rounds of golf, arrived in Tokyo a day earlier than expected. Feeling lonely that evening, he employed the services of a beautiful young Japanese girl to be his companion for the evening. Although the Japanese girl spoke very little English and the businessman spoke no Japanese, their passion roared, and in the heat of the moment she began yelling, "Gama Su! Gama Su!" Hearing this, the Californian knew he had pleased his female Japanese friend, and soon afterwards went to sleep. The next day, while playing golf with his Japanese business colleagues, one of his Japanese partners holed his shot from 170 yards away. Everyone went crazy and began yelling excitedly in Japanese. Wanting to impress his friends, the Californian joined in and began yelling, "Gamasu! Gamasu!" Suddenly, everyone became quiet. After a moment of silence, one of the Japanese turned to him and asked, "Wrong hole? What do you mean, wrong hole?" An old man. Mr. Goldstein was living the last of his life in a nursing home. One day he appeared to be very sad and depressed. Nurse Elisa asked if there was anything wrong. "Yes, Nurse Lisa," said Mr. Goldstein. "My private parts died today, and I am very sad." Knowing her patients were forgetful and sometimes a little crazy, she replied, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Goldstein. Please accept my condolences." The following day, Mr. Goldstein was walking down the hall with his private parts hanging out of his pajamas when he met Nurse Lisa. "Mr. Goldstein," she said, "you shouldn't be walking down the hall like that. Please put your private parts back inside your pajamas." "But, Nurse Lisa," replied Mr. Goldstein, "I told you yesterday that my private parts died." "Yes, you did tell me that. But why are they hanging out of your pajamas?" asked Nurse Lisa. "Well, today's the day of the viewing." Two young guys were picked up by the cops for smoking dope and appeared in court on Friday before the judge. The judge said, "You seem like nice young men, and I'd like to give you a second chance rather than jail this time. I want you to go out this weekend and try to show others the evils of drug use and get them to give up the drugs forever. I'll see you back then in court on Monday." On Monday, the two guys were in court, and the judge said to the first one, "How did you do over the weekend?" "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 17 people to give up the drugs forever." 17 people? That's wonderful. What did you tell them?" "I used a diagram, Your Honor. I drew 2 circles and told them that the big circle is your brain before drugs and the small circle is your brain after drugs." "That's admirable," said the judge. "And you? How did you do?" he asked the second boy. "Well, Your Honor, I persuaded 156 people to give up drugs forever." 156 people? That's amazing. How did you manage to do that?" "Well, I used a similar approach. I drew 2 circles and I said, pointing to the small circle, 'This is your arsehole before prison.'" A man lay sprawled across 3 entire seats in the posh theater. When the usher came by and noticed this, he whispered to the man, "Sorry, sir, But you're only allowed one seat." The man groaned but didn't budge. The usher became impatient. "Sir, if you don't get up from there, I'm going to have to call the manager." Again the man just groaned, which infuriated the usher, who turned and marched briskly back up the aisle in search of his manager. In a few moments, both the usher and the manager returned and stood over the man. Together, the two of them tried repeatedly to make him move, but with no success. Finally, they summoned the police. The cop surveyed the situation briefly, then asked, "All right, buddy. What's your name?" "Sam," the man moaned. "Where are you from, Sam?" With pain in his voice, Sam replied, "The balcony." The boss wondered why one of his most valued employees was absent but had not phoned in sick. Needing to have an urgent problem with one of the main computers resolved, he dialed the employee's home phone number and was greeted with a child's whisper. "Hello? Is your daddy home?" he asked. "Yes," whispered the small voice. "May I speak with him?" The child whispered, "No." Surprised and wanting to talk with an adult, the boss asked, "Is your mommy there?" "Yes." "May I speak with her?" Again the small voice whispered, "No." Hoping there was somebody with whom he could leave a message, the boss asked, "Is anybody else there?" "Yes," whispered the child, "a policeman." Wondering what a cop would be doing at his employee's home, the boss asked, "May I speak with the policeman?" "No, he's busy," whispered the child. "Busy doing what?" "Talking to Daddy and Mommy and the fireman," came the whispered answer. Growing more worried as he heard a loud noise in the background through the earpiece on the phone, the boss asked, "What is that noise?" "A helicopter," answered the whispering voice. "What is going on there?" demanded the boss, now truly apprehensive. Again whispering, the child answered, "The search team just landed a helicopter." Alarmed, concerned, and a little frustrated, the boss asked, "What are they searching for?" Still whispering, the young voice replied with a muffled giggle. A man doing market research for the Vaseline company knocked at the door and was greeted by a young woman with 3 small children running around at her feet. "I'm doing some research for Vaseline. Have you ever used the product?" She said, "Yes, my husband and I use it all the time." "If you don't mind my asking," he said, "what do you use it for?" "We use it when we make love," she said. The researcher was a little taken aback. "Usually people lie to me and say they use it on a child's bicycle chain or to help with a gate hinge. But in fact, I know that most people do use it for sex. I admire you for your honesty. Since you've been so frank so far, can you tell me exactly how you use it?" The woman said, "I don't mind telling you at all. My husband and I put it on the doorknob, and it keeps the kids out." What were you thinking? There is a girl walking up the stairs in a church one day. As the priest is walking by, he looks up and notices that this girl is not wearing any panties. The priest calls the girl and gives her $20 and says, "Little girl, take this money and buy yourself some panties. It's not proper to walk around without any panties on." The girl goes home and gives the money to her mother and asks her mother to buy panties for her. When the mother asked where the girl got the money, the girl explained what happened. Upon hearing how the girl got the money, the mother rushes to her room, whips off her panties, puts on one of her shortest dresses, and runs out to the church. As soon as the mother sees the priest coming, she begins to walk up the stairs. The priest then notices the lady and calls her down. The woman, not wanting to show that she is expecting anything, walks back to the priest very calmly. The priest hands the lady $1 and says, "Lady, take this money and for God's sake go buy yourself a razor." Harry and his wife are having hard financial times, so they decide that she'll become a hooker. She's not quite sure what to do, so Harry says, "Stand in front of that bar and pick up a guy. Tell him that you charge $100. If you have a question, I'll be parked around the corner." She's standing there for 5 minutes when a guy pulls up and asks, "How much?" She says, $100. He says, "All I got is 30." She says, "Hold on," and runs back to Harry and asks, "What can he get for 30? Harry replies, "A hand job." She runs back and tells the guy all he gets for $30 is a hand job. He agrees, and she gets in the car. He unzips his pants and out pops his penis, and it's huge. She stares at it for a minute and then says, "I'll be right back." She runs back to Harry and asks, "Can you loan this guy $70? The priest in a small Irish village loved the rooster and 10 hens he kept in the hen house behind the church. One Sunday morning, before Mass, he went to feed the birds and discovered that the cock was missing. He knew about cockfights in the village, so he questioned his parishioners in church. During Mass, he asked the congregation, "Has anybody got a cock?" All the men stood up. No, he said. "That wasn't what I meant." "Has anybody seen a cock?" All the women stood up. No, he said. "That wasn't what I meant. Has anybody seen a cock that does not belong to them?" Half the women stood up. No, he said. "That wasn't what I meant. Has anybody seen my cock?" 16 altar boys and 2 priests stood up. The priest fainted. A nice, calm, and respectable lady went into the pharmacy, walked up to the pharmacist, looked straight into his eyes, and said, "I'd like to buy some cyanide." The pharmacist asked, "Why in the world do you need cyanide?" The lady replied, "I need it to poison my husband." The pharmacist's eyes grew big and he exclaimed, "Lord have mercy. I can't give you cyanide to kill your husband. That's against the law. I'll lose my license. They'll throw both of us in jail. All kinds of bad things will happen. Absolutely not. You cannot have any cyanide." The lady reached into her purse and pulled out a picture of her husband in bed with the pharmacist's wife. The pharmacist looked at the picture and said, "You didn't tell me you had a prescription." Tom, a handsome dude, walked into a sports bar around 9:58 p.m. He sat down next to a blonde at the bar and stared up at the TV. The 10 o'clock p.m. news was coming on. The news crew was covering a story of a man on a ledge of a large building preparing to jump. The blonde looked at Tom and said, "Do you think he'll jump?" Tom says, "I bet he'll jump." The blonde replied, "Well, I bet he won't." Tom placed a $20 bill on the bar and said, "You're on." Just as the blonde placed her money on the bar, the guy on the ledge did a swan dive off the building, falling to his death. The blonde was very upset, but willingly handed her $20 to Tom, saying, "Fair's fair, here's your money." Tom replied, "I can't take your money. I saw this earlier on the 5 p.m. news, and so I knew he would jump." The blonde replied, "I did too, but I didn't think he'd do it again." Tom took the money. An Irishman and his wife were awakened at 3 o'clock a.m. by a loud pounding on the door. The man gets up and goes to the door where a drunken stranger, standing in the pouring rain, is asking for a push. "Not a chance," says "It is 3 o'clock in the morning." He slams the door and returns to bed. "Who was that?" asked his Irish wife. "Just some drunk Irish guy asking for a push," he answers. "Did you help him?" she asks. "No, I did not. It's 3 a.m. in the morning and it's bloomin' well pouring with rain out there." "Well, you have a short memory," says his wife. "Can't you remember about 3 months ago when we broke down and those 2 guys helped us? I think you should help him, and you should be ashamed of yourself. God loves drunk people too, you know." The man does as he is told, gets dressed, and goes out into the pounding rain. He calls out into the dark, "Hello, are you still there?" "Yes," comes back the answer. "Do you still need a push?" calls out the husband. "Yes, please," comes the reply from the dark. "Where are you?" asks the husband. "Over here on the swing," replied the drunk.